energy in our culture. And so what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of lighting that we have in our buildings by using daylight harvesting so that light levels dim when it's bright enough outside, and by using more energy efficient light fixtures. Light fixtures, by replacing light fixtures, you can almost pay for themselves in a year or two. In our own building and some of the office buildings, we're cutting the energy use in half. So whereas before we were using 1.2 watts per square foot of energy to light our buildings, we're down to a half a watt per square foot. And for every 3 watts of square foot we use to light our buildings, we need an additional watt of energy to cool off the heat generated by that light. And you can see here in the studio, you know, with the high lighting necessary for television, it generates quite a lot of heat. So then we spend more energy to cool down these buildings once we illuminate them artificially. So by using, you know, daylight and by using higher performance lighting, you can have some significant energy improvements in that particular area. And then even from a point of view of water resources, almost 60% of the water we use in our office buildings is to flush toilets. And so we spend a ton of energy treating our water to make it potable, and then we just run it down the toilet. So in our own building, we're doing rainwater harvesting, where you capture the rainwater, you store it in a cistern underground, and you pump that back into the building to flush all your toilets. And there's all kinds of connections. We were at a school building a year ago that it's 300,000 square feet. They flush all their toilets and irrigate all their ball fields without using a drop of potable water. It's all from the rainwater and the stormwater that's collected onto the site, which previously we would just either run off into adjacent sites or have to store it on site in underground cisterns. So now we store it and we reuse it. So it's a wonderful technology that pays for itself and protects some of our water resources.
So this clearly creates a new market for a whole lot of new products.
Oh, absolutely. Whether it's solar panels or the technologies for these water recycling systems, even our materials that come into a building are trying to be made from recycled materials. It was only 3 or 4 years ago we went to some of our ceiling manufacturers and said, well, all the ceiling tiles we use in our commercial buildings, why can't we get them using recycled materials? And they said, oh, it's too expensive. Now you almost can't buy a ceiling tile that doesn't contain a recycled material. So it's catching on. It's a $60 billion industry just here in the United States, green construction, and we see it growing tremendously in the near future.
And I saw on your blog you have dispensed with the need for water bottles.
Yeah, we're really trying to look everywhere in our building, and so most offices bring in bottled water because that's what the people like, and then it also is a convenience that it's chilled and heated. So there's water coolers in every office building, and the amount of energy that's wasted in getting those water bottles, filling them with water, trucking them over to the different offices, and the water that comes out of our tap is actually cleaner in many respects than the bottled water. We're doing a desalination plant, and the drinking standards for municipal water systems are much, much higher than are out there for your bottled water. And so when you go by Evian or Poland Spring, potentially there's more contaminants in that water than is in your drinking water and your tap water. And so I find it odd that people, you know, are constantly buying bottled water for their homes and their offices. So what we did in our office is we purchased a water filtration system. So even if some of our staff felt that the tap water isn't clean enough, it runs it through some additional filters, both chemical and mechanical. So there's a sand filter to take out any particulates, and there's a chemical filter, a carbon filter, to take out any other contaminants. So the water that comes out of our water cooler now is cleaner than you can ever get anywhere else. Yeah, and it saves energy, and it's a good thing for our planet.
So now, from what you've been telling me, you're right now a practicing architect. You have a firm.
That's correct.
Michael Shilale
Architects,
right? And so you get up every day and you practice your architecture. So clients call you and you look at the project. Either they want to renovate a building or they want to build a new building, and you're applying your knowledge to whatever they present to you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And that's what you're doing day to day. Now, it occurred to me that with all your knowledge about green buildings, you could become like an expert that teaches other architects. You could create information products, you could give lectures, presentations, you could actually tour the country, tour the world. Has that ever occurred to you?
Well, I do presentations to many organizations, our local engineers, the local community planners. We have a planning federation in our county that asked me to speak at their annual dinner to talk about some of these strategies. And I do teach a class at the local community college. And so, bringing that information and some of those strategies to our architects, our engineers, our community planners is critical, but my passion is architecture. I'm an artist at heart. I was happy to hear the hip hopper artist Opera Steve earlier today, and that's my passion is to create buildings and places. And the thing that we do that I think is unique is we kind of synergize all of those different strategies. So whether we're doing a child care center, trying to make a difference in the lives of young people, or a school, we're saying, well, making those facilities greener is not only better for the environment, it's better for the occupants. There's stats out there that says worker productivity increases almost 20% in a building that's healthier, and school test scores go up in a building that's a green building, 20% or more in some of the stats that are out there. So we think doing the architecture and doing it in a way that's sustainable is not only my social responsibility as an architect, it's my passion. So it's something I love to do, and hearing Opera Steve talk about his passion, it's sort of my mantra as well. You have to do what you love to love what you do, and so you find that passion and you run with it.
Now, I'm sitting here, and the name Buckminster Fuller is being downloaded from the universe to me. Now, has he been an influence in your life?
No, Bucky was a big influence in my life. He sort of like another gentleman called Santiago Calatrava, both an engineer and an architect. And I think the synergy of those two is critical to our planet and to our profession. This integrative design, that is what we talk about, is the intelligent integration of technology with nature. And so you need the engineering aspects. You need to understand the engineering aspects of a building in order to design it in a more sustainable way. And what happens far too often is all of our experts go into their individual silos and they optimize their individual systems, and they don't think about a building in a holistic way. And we miss so many opportunities. The connections between paint color and light levels and air conditioning loads are all interrelated, and the connections between the kinds of windows that you put in a building and the glass that you specify and the cooling loads that you have there, or as I said earlier, the rainwater and stormwater and the amount of potable water. By making those connections, I think we can make much more higher performing buildings and really exist around with our planet in a much more sustainable way.
So the thing I like about this approach is it's holistic. And it takes everything into account.
Absolutely.
That is really the beauty of it. Now, what is always fascinating to me is how you're able to measure. For example, if you're suggesting somebody have a building that goes green, how do you measure the savings? That's a fascinating aspect to it.
It's one of our biggest challenges, and in some of the work that we do, the $10 million of work that's paid for itself, that's actually done with something called an energy performance contract. And every year, the energy savings are measured, and they're actually guaranteed to the client. So we have one client that's saving about $400,000 a year on their utility bills. And that savings over 18 years will pay for over $7 million worth of renovation. So we get financing, and we pay the contractors to do the work. And the client, instead of spending $2.4 million on their utility bills, they only spend $2 million. And the extra $400,000 goes to this financing company, and that will have paid for the energy savings, and that gets measured and it gets guaranteed. And there's a lot of technologies out there that can measure light levels, that can measure energy use by your